Oh, hello there! Welcome to another exciting edition of Number the Stars. Today, Rowan and I will be reading Chapter 3, Where is Mrs. Hirsch? Already sounds like a mystery. I'm in. The days of September passed, one after the other, much the same. Annemarie and Ellen walked to school together and home again, always now taking the longer way. Ooh, I'm noticing that they walk now. They don't race each other. Sounds like they don't really want to show and make a scene. They avoid the tall soldier and his partner. Christy dawdled behind them or scampered ahead, never out of their sight. The two mothers still had their coffee together in the afternoons. They began to knit mittens as the days grew slightly shorter and the first leaves began to fall from the trees. Because another winter was coming. Everyone remembered the last one. There was no fuel for the homes or apartments in Copenhagen, and the winter nights were terribly cold. So this is something called rationing, when they take away things that people use on a daily basis for the war effort. So sometimes it's oil, coffee, sugar, things like that. Like the other families in their building, the Johnsons had opened up the old chimney and installed a little stove for heat when they could find coal to burn. Mama used it too sometimes for cooking because electricity was rationed now. So guys, remember, rationed is just basically a small supply of something that you're given. So maybe like during a drought, you only have a small ration of water. Or during a quarantine right now, you might only have a small ration of your favorite cookies left, right? Before you can go out to the store and get another one. Sometimes Ellen's father, a teacher, complained in frustration that he couldn't see in the dim light to correct his students' papers. Soon we'll have to add another blanket to your bed, Mama said one morning as she and Annemarie tidied the bedroom. Christy and I are lucky to have each other for the warmth in the winter, Annemarie said. Poor Ellen has no sisters. Remember, Ellen's her best friend, not her sister. She will have to snuggle with her Mama and Papa when it gets cold, Mama said, smiling. I remember when Christy slept between you and Papa. She was supposed to stay in her crib, but in the middle of the night she would climb out and get in with you, Annemarie said, smoothing the pillows on the bed. Then she hesitated and glanced at her mother, fearful that she had said something wrong. The thing that would bring the pained look on her mother's face. The days that little Christy slept in Mama and Papa's room were the days when Lisa and Annemarie shared a bed. But Mama was laughing quietly. I remember too, she said. Sometimes she wet the bed in the middle of the night. I did not, Christy said hastily from the bedroom door. I never, ever, ever did that. Mama was still laughing, knelt and kissed Christy on the cheek. Time to leave for school, girls, she said. She began to button Christy's jacket. Oh dear, she said silently. Look, the button is broken. Right in half. Annemarie, take Christy with you after school to the little shop where Mrs. Hirsch sells thread and buttons. See if you can buy just one to match the others on her jacket. I'll give you some kroner. It shouldn't cost you very much. Ooh, do you ever feel like that? Like when Annemarie's saying how she has to watch what she says. She doesn't want to upset her mother or her sister, right? Sounds like there's a really painful time in their past. But after school, when the girls stopped at the shop, which had been there as long as Annemarie could remember, they found it closed. There was a sign and a padlock on the door, and the sign was in German. They couldn't read the words. Now, they're from Copenhagen. Do you think they were or do you think they grew up learning German? Do you think Miss Hirsch wrote that sign? Make a prediction. What would cause it to close? I wonder if Mrs. Hirsch is sick, Annemarie said as they walked away. I saw her Saturday, Ellen said. She was with her husband and their son. They looked just fine. Or at least the parents looked fine. Their son always looked like a horror, she giggled. Annemarie made a face. The Hirsch family lived in the neighborhood, so they had seen the boy, Samuel, often. He was a tall teenager with thick glasses, stooped shoulders, and unruly hair. So kind of visualize what does that look like? He's like bad posture, crazy, messy hair. He rode a bicycle to school, leaning forward and squinting, wrinkling his nose and nudged his glasses into place. His bicycle had wooden wheels, now that rubber wasn't available, and it creaked and clattered on the street. I think the Hirsches all went on vacation to the seashore, Christy announced. I suppose they took a big basket of pink frosted cupcakes with them, Annemarie said sarcastically to her sister. Yes, I suppose they did, Christy replied. Annemarie and Ellen exchanged looks that meant, Christy is so dumb. No one in Copenhagen had taken a vacation at the seashore since the war began. There were no pink frosted cupcakes. There hadn't been in months. Still, Annemarie thought, looking back at the shop before they turned the corner, where was Mrs. Hirsch? The Hirsch family had gone somewhere. Why else would they close their shop? Mama was troubled when she heard the news. Are you sure? She asked several times. We can find another button someplace, Annemarie reassured her. Or we can take one from the bottom of the jacket and move it up, and it won't show very much. But it didn't seem to be the jacket that worried Mama. Are you sure the sign was in German? She asked. Maybe you didn't look carefully enough. Mama, it had a swastika on it. Remember, that's the Nazi symbol. Her mother turned away with a distracted look. Based on how her mom's acting, how can you tell the way she's feeling? She's looking away. It's the way she's asking these questions. Think about that in your head. She began to peel the potatoes for dinner. Annemarie, watch your sister for a few moments. I'll be right back. Where are you going? Annemarie asked her as her mother started for the door. It seems like she's running away urgently. I want to talk to Mrs. Rosen. That's Ellen's mom. Puzzled, Annemarie watched her mother leave the apartment. She went to the kitchen and opened up the door to the cupboard where the potatoes were kept. Every night now, it seemed, they had potatoes for dinner and very little else. Annemarie was almost asleep when there was a light knock at the bedroom door. Don't bark, please. Candlelight appeared at the door and her mother... No, please don't bark. The candlelight appeared at the door and her mother stepped in. Are you asleep, Annemarie? No, why? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, but I'd like you to get up and come to the living room. Peter's here, and Papa and I want to talk to you. Now remember, Peter is Lise's fiance, right? And he comes to the house now. He's always in a rush, so it's kind of strange that he's here and he wants to talk to her, right? Annemarie jumped out of bed and Christy grunted in her sleep. Peter, she hadn't seen him in such a long time. There was something frightening about him being here at night, though. Copenhagen had a curfew, and no citizens were allowed out after 8 o'clock. It was very dangerous, she knew, for Peter to visit at this time. But she was delighted that he was here. Though the visits were hurried, they almost seemed secret somehow, in a way that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Still, it was a treat to see Peter. It brought back memories of happier times, and her parents loved Peter too. They said that he was like a son. Barefoot, she ran to the living room and into Peter's arms. He grinned, kissed her on the cheek, and ruffled her long hair. You've grown taller since I've last seen you, he told her. You're all legs. Annemarie laughed. I won the girls' foot race last Friday at school, she told him proudly. Where have you been? We missed you. My work takes me all over, Peter explained. Look, I brought you something. One for Christy, too. He reached into his pocket and handed out 2 seashells. Annemarie put the small one on the table and saved the other one for her sister. She held the other one in her hands, turning it to the light, looking at the rigid, pearly surface. It was so like Peter to bring just the right gift. For your mama and papa, I brought something more practical. 2 bottles of beer. Mama and Papa smiled and raised their glasses. Papa took a sip and wiped the foam from his upper lip. Their faces became more serious. Annemarie, he said, Peter tells us that the Germans have issued orders for closing many stores run by Jews. How could they just do that? Germans just close someone's store. Jews? Annemarie repeated. Is Mrs. Hirsch Jewish? Is that why the button shop is closed? Why have they done that? Peter leaned forward. It's their way of tormenting. For some reason, they want to torment Jewish people. It's happened in other countries, too. They have taken their time here. Let us relax a little. But now it seems to be starting. So in other countries, they started doing this, too. Can you imagine? Think about your market day business. Imagine you made thousands of dollars. That's how you provided for your family. It's how you get your house. And then one day, someone just closed it and said you can't go there anymore. What would you do for money? What would you do? It's unfair. It's not right. Why the button shop? What harm does a button shop do? Mrs. Hirsch is such a nice lady. Even Samuel, though he's a dope, he would never harm anyone. How could he? He can't even see with those thick glasses. Then Annemarie thought of something else. If they can't sell buttons, how will they earn a living? Friends will take care of them, Mama said gently. That's what friends do. Annemarie nodded. Mama was right, of course. Friends and neighbors would go to the home of the Hirsch family and take them fish and potatoes and bread and herbs for making tea. Maybe Peter would even take them a beer. They would be comfortable until their shop was allowed to open again. Then suddenly she sat upright, her eyes wide. Mama, she said, Papa, the Rosens are Jewish too. Her parents nodded, their faces serious. I talked to Sophie Rosen this afternoon after you told me about the button shop, Mama said. She knows what is happening, but she doesn't think it'll affect them too much. Annemarie thought and understood. She relaxed. Mrs. Rosen doesn't have a shop. She's a teacher. They can't close a whole school. She looked at Peter for the question in her eyes. Can they? I think the Rosens will be all right, he said. But you keep an eye out for your friend Ellen and stay away from soldiers. Your mother told me about what happened in the town near us. On the street with the German soldiers. Annemarie shrugged and almost forgot about the incident. It was nothing. They were only bored and looking for someone to talk to, I think. She turned to Father. Papa, do you remember what you heard the boy say to the soldier? That all of Denmark would be the king's bodyguard. Her father smiled. I have never forgotten it, he said. Well, Annemarie said slowly, now I think all of Denmark should be the bodyguards for the Jewish people as well. So we shall be, Papa replied. What a brave thing for Annemarie to say. Peter stood. I must go, he said. And you, Longlegs, it is way past your bedtime now. He hugged Annemarie again. Later, once more her bed besides the warm cocoon of her sister, Anne remembered how her father had said 3 years before that he would die to protect the king. That her mother would too, and Annemarie, 7 years old, had announced proudly that she would. So when she was 7, she said that she would die for her king. Now she's 10, with long legs and more silly dreams of pink frosted cupcakes. I noticed they keep bringing up pink frosted cupcakes. Remember I told you earlier in the year that authors bring up symbols over and over again to try and tell you a story. Think about, anytime you hear about pink frosted cupcakes, what could that mean? And now, with all the Danes were the bodyguards for Ellen, and Ellen's parents, and all the Denmark Jews, why would she die to protect them? Truly? Annemarie was honest with herself to admit, in the darkness to herself, that she wasn't so sure. For a moment, she felt frightened. She pulled the blanket up higher around her neck and relaxed. It was all imaginary anyway, not real. It was only in fairy tales that people were called upon to be so brave, to die for one another. Not in real life. Denmark. Oh, there were soldiers, that was true, and the courageous resistance leaders. Some who lost their lives, that was true as well. But ordinary people like the Rosens and the Johnsons, Annemarie admitted to herself, snuggling there in the quiet dark, that she was glad to be an ordinary person who would never be called upon for courage. So, boys and girls, do you think someone who's 10 years old could be brave to think about dying for their best friend? You might agree, you might not be sure. It's an interesting thought. Tomorrow I will read chapter 4. Remember, boys and girls, you should still be reading about 25 minutes a day. Okay, you got to keep up with that. Answer the discussion questions at the bottom. You can make a journal. You can just discuss it with your parents. Up to you. Have a great day, guys. Love and miss you all. Stay safe.